Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. If you've already finalized your 2026 plan, congratulations. Truly, that is no small feat. Now for the less comfortable truth. Most plans don't fail because they were poorly thought out. They fail because reality shows up early and uninvited. Now, today we're going to talk about why that happens, and more importantly, how organizations stay ahead of change by planning around capacity and people, not just projects. Before we get started, I like to get to know our audience a little better and launch our first poll. So, we want to know how you're currently managing team capacity today in the year 2026. Are you using spreadsheets? Are you using Jira boards or custom dashboards? Maybe you have a dedicated planning tool that's outside of Atlassian software, some kind of combination of the first three, or maybe you don't really manage capacity or maybe you don't know how you do it right now. I'm going to give this a few seconds as answers start pouring in. Got a really good participation right here. Thank you so much. And we take the answers to these questions, and that's how we learn a lot about our audiences and how to make our products even better. Okay, I'm going to end the poll right now. And we'll see kind of across the board here. We got quite a few people using spreadsheets and Jira boards or dedicated planning tools, some combination. Great. Or you don't really manage capacity. Well, you've all come to the right place because we're going to talk about how we manage capacity with Tempo apps, not just with Capacity Planner, which we'll be focusing on now, but the other ones that connect with it and integrate with it as well. I'd like to formally introduce myself. My name is Chris Chapelier, but everybody calls me Chappy. I'm one of the senior product marketing managers here at Tempo, focusing on timesheets, capacity planner, financial manager. And with me, I have Robbie Abbey, one of our solutions engineers, who will be giving a demo. So here's what we'll cover. We'll start with talking about how even the best plans break when reality hits, and go over some of the challenges we've heard from our customers and how they go into reactive mode when it comes to planning. We'll then show a demo so you can see Capacity Planner in action. And finally, we'll show how it connects to the rest of the Tempo platform. And speaking of the Tempo platform, Capacity Planner fits in well with our collections. Today, we'll be focusing mainly on the project collection, which we'll revisit toward the end of the webinar, and we'll also be offering discounts to qualified customers on these collections. Before we get into the content, I want to connect more with you lovely people and launch our second poll question on the biggest challenges when planning work. So what is your biggest challenge today with planning work and capacity? You have shifting priorities that disrupt your plans. You have difficulty forecasting demand. Maybe it's just lack of visibility in the team availability, getting stakeholders aligned, or maybe you have too many disconnected tools. And these are all challenges that we are looking to solve with our solutions. All right, so it looks like, the biggest challenge is shifting priorities and disrupting plans. Yes, totally relate to that. Every company I've worked for, we've had this kind of challenge. But we have, with our solutions that work within Jira, we'll be able to not only overcome this reactive planning mode, but get into more of a proactive planning. Now, every year starts with optimism. Clear goals, confident roadmaps, a sense that this is the year execution finally runs smoothly. And then it hits. Priorities shift, teams change, urgent work appears while capacity quietly disappears. So here's the key point. Most plans assume capacity is stable, but people, teams, and demand aren't. So even strong strategies break, not because they were wrong, but because the plan couldn't adapt. Now, when plans don't reflect real availability, leaders are forced into reactive decisions like we were talking about earlier. That leads to overloaded teams, missed commitments, budget surprises, and eventually lost confidence in delivery. Spreadsheets and side tools often try to fill that gap, but they only mask the problem. Reactive planning doesn't just feel chaotic, it's expensive. So high-performing organizations, like a lot of our customers, flip the model. Instead of starting with projects, they start with capacity. What teams can realistically deliver? Now, Tempo Capacity Planner makes this shift possible by giving leaders visibility into team availability and workload before commitments are locked in. It helps teams plan work based on real capacity, see those risks early, and adjust quickly as priorities change without starting over. And that's exactly what we're about to show you. In the demo, we'll walk through how Capacity Planner, as well as the other apps in Tempo's project collection, support adaptability in real-world scenarios. Not perfect plans, but very realistic Wednesdays. Now, capacity planning is most powerful when it's connected to how work is structured, tracked, and reviewed. When signals are connected, leaders move from reacting after the fact to making confident decisions earlier. This is how planning scales in complex organizations. Now, here's where it gets even better. If you're already using timesheets, structure, or financial manager, Capacity Planner plugs right in. You can compare plan versus actual time, track cost impact, and see the whole picture without needing an integration wizard or a bunch of extra tools. Basically, it plays nice with your stack and makes you look good in meetings. Win-win. Now, I'd like to thank you for sitting through my pitch, but let's go into the product itself. I'd like to hand this over to Tempo's esteemed solutions engineer, Robbie Abbey.
All right. Thanks, Chappie. I appreciate it. And thanks to everybody for joining. I see we've got 250 people on here. So that's pretty awesome. Chappie, I'm going to take the screen from you and we're going to jump into just kind of an understanding of tempo and just kind of where capacity planner lies within that whole stretch of different parts of the solution, different modules that we're going to talk about here today, and then how they all play well together. I am not a slides kind of guy, so we'll definitely only show this when we're talking about sort of moving back and forth between things. But capacity planner, again, as you can see, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, capacity planner lives to work with things like structure, with timesheets, getting extra reporting that you may not currently have if you're only using, like, for example, timesheets or timekeeping. Financial manager is great for doing things like tying that planning and forecasting, costs, expenses, things like that as you go through. So we're going to start off today within just, I guess we'll say, the capacity planner as itself. So sort of, as it's standalone. Now, of course, we will talk about the integration with the other parts, but I definitely want to go over how capacity planner works, what it can bring to you, the different kinds of visibility that you can get, and the ways that people look at, different types of capacity across teams. I loved it. Yeah, I love it, but it was really interesting, I guess, to see within that poll, how many folks in that, sort of in that side in the chat, we're talking about how, it's more than just one thing. There's a lot of different things that we have to, sort of deal with or take into consideration when we're planning capacity. You may have people that have different iterations, different sprint schedules. You may have people that are working in different methodologies across those teams. And capacity planner really helps you bring all of that together and view, what that capacity looks like, starting with something as simple as almost like a heat map to get an idea of exactly which teams have got those different times available. So in this particular view, and I'm just jumping right into capacity planner. Again, this is in the Tempo, in that Tempo app. I'm just going straight into capacity planner here within Jira. And this first view really shows the different teams that we've created within Tempo. Again, those Tempo teams can be, mirrored with your Jira teams if you want to. Some folks will use those teams per project or per initiative. Just kind of create some teams ad hoc if you need to. But if you have established teams, that's awesome. We'll be able to keep all of that in here and view exactly what everyone's working on. So we'll kind of start off at this point. We're looking at this by, in our case, in this particular situation, we're looking at this by months. You can bump that up to quarters if you wanted that sort of view in there. But what we're looking at, of course, is the different teams and what their capacities are based on their iterations. If you're not working in sprints, that's absolutely fine. That can be toggled off, so you could turn off those cadences if you want to. But in this case, because we just want to understand that, there are people that work across different, different methodologies, we'll be able to see all of that in here. So when we're looking at this, for example, we've got our average Joe's team. We've got essentially all the information that they've got planned, everything that they've got planned at a high level for that whole team. Now, if we wanted to dig in and see exactly who's on that team and what they have planned individually, we can also toggle that as well. So if we just do a drop down on our average Joe's team, we could see these high level plans that they've got up here. But then we also see the individuals that are on that team. And so if we've got, different capacities for those individuals, we can also sort of drill down even further in our resource view. But in this case, we're looking at, that overall team view. who is on that team? Are they shared across other teams? I know there's a lot of situations where teams will, pull in a person from another team to, complete some different things if they need to, or there's a task at the end that closes it out and we need someone from, let's just say, DevOps to come in and actually do some work on that. So we're able to see exactly who's on each team, what their skills are and what they're bringing to the table as far as that team goes. And then, any skills that they may have. So if we have things like, we need a back end developer, we need front end, we need designer, we need QA, we're able to see exactly who has those skills and what they're, sort of offering to that team in that overall view. Now, the cool thing about this too, again, we see these sort of indicators up at the top as far as the sprints go or whatever that iteration is. Clicking on that will actually bring up your utilization rate. So we get a lot of information that we're getting from that planning. You can see ahead by weeks or months or quarters, what's that expected utilization rate going to be within your capacity planning? So we've got, for example, our overall utilization rate, our total capacity of all of the team members put together. We also have the ability to sync those plans from Jira. So if you're doing things like Jira side sprint planning, you've got your backlog, you're going through and assigning it to a sprint, putting a person's name on it, putting an estimate in there. Those plans can be synced directly over from that Jira sprint planning. Things that might be non-synced, so things like holidays. If a person is in a location that has a local holiday or a national holiday or something like that, or if they're on, vacation or holiday, again, depending on where you're from, then you'll be able to see that kind of information in here too. And then any remaining availability. So it does give you an indicator visually of exactly what's going on with that particular team during that sprint. You can click on it and see exactly what that breakdown looks like. Now, if you're looking to do a little bit more of, again, that proactive planning, which is really kind of what we're here for, that's where things like flex plans may come into play. So up at the top, we've got a sort of a section, almost like I think about this like a sticky note on a whiteboard. You're trying to like, we need to get this done. We don't know who to assign it to yet, but we just need to put it on here and see who can take it on. So let's say we wanted to create a plan. We can come in and say, all right, I need this particular issue to be, completed. I estimate that at, either by FTEs or by hours. In my case, let's say we're going to need 20 hours for that. And so we're building out a plan. And we could put that in here and basically say, all right, if we put this into a particular team's view or a particular team's resources, plan for them to be able to do that work over a certain period of time, we could see in sort of that heat map which team might be able to take that on. Is there someone like, for example, Classic Rock down here that might be able to take something on in this particular sprint? If that team already has a plan that exists with it, then we'll give you that heads up to say like, all right, there's already something tied to that for that team. They're already doing work on it. But you can essentially move that around and see how that adjusts your capacity for that future sprint. So I know we're looking at this by weeks, but again, you can go all the way out to quarters, see exactly how everything's lined up. For example, Classic Rock here has got a lot going on in Q1 of 2026. So we can come in and see exactly how we're doing with that utilization rate. Are they over capacity for a certain sprint or time period? And be able to kind of view that and sort of catch that before, that really comes into play. So again, heat map kind of gives you an idea of exactly what's going on. Then you can also drill down not only into the individual plans for that team, but then also anything that the resources on that team have done. I think one of the questions that I saw was, how do we get into exactly what those teams look like and, the individuals on those teams and really get granular with it if we want to. So again, this is that team level view. But if I click on my resource button up here, and I've already got this pulled up, we can toggle into sort of that individual view. So I'm filtering all of these people based on various teams or roles or skills. Let's say you had a project that you're working on and you need someone who has a specific skill added to a team. So I could come in here and search by those skills. Like, for example, I might need somebody in QA that's available. And I could see everyone who has that QA skill, exactly what their availability and capacity might be. And then I could choose to say like, all right, well, if we've got Ben or, Bethany or somebody who has some more free time, and then free time is kind of a dirty word, but we'll call some capacity. We can actually come in and set that up so that Bethany may be able to be moved on to to a team for that particular project, take over certain things at a period of time. The nice thing about those teams is that you can also bring people on for a set period of time. Let's say you're going to have them dedicated to a team for 1 week, and they're at 50% of their capacity dedicated to that team's planning. We're able to take that into account. We also take into account things like calendar integration. So for example, if I have someone who has a calendar who's integrated, like Bethany, for example, she's got calendar events here that we're pulling either from like Office 365, Outlook calendars, Google calendars, whatever that might be. And we could see if that person has something that's contributing to that, to their capacity. So let's say we've got an 8-hour day for Bethany. And maybe she's got, 4 or 5 different meetings that she's got planned during the day. Perhaps she doesn't actually have 8 hours of time. So integrating those calendar events into Capacity Planner lets you see future state of people's capacity. Again, we want to be able to see, are there any vacations? Are there any like loads of meetings that are going on that are going to detract from that capacity and that availability? So again, we're taking into account not only the stuff that they have planned within Jira, but then also anything else, keeping in mind their work life. Do they have things that are going on? Are they taking time off? Do they have a million meetings to attend to? How can we adjust that for that person to make sure that they have the capacity that we need? So let's talk a little bit about, when we're doing that planning and how do we set up those teams. And I'm just going to mention this because I know I've seen that question a lot. We have teams like, for example, our average Joe's team. We can click on that team, see exactly who is on that team, what they have planned, what their high level work. We can really drill into things based on either status or the amount of estimated time that's remaining on that particular task, and really get an overall view by those teams. But we can also see exactly who's on those teams, what times they have available within Tempo teams. So for example, our average Joe's team, we may have 9 members currently. We have 6 users that are in here. They have their skills. They may have times when they're joining or leaving that team. But we can also, within Tempo Capacity Planner, create things like generic resources. So let's say, for example, I've got this team average Joe's, and I know I'm going to need another developer or someone else to join that team, but I still need to plan ahead. I'm not sure exactly who's going to join yet. I can use those generic resources to add them to the team, have them contribute to that team capacity, be able to plan ahead for that person whenever we actually turn them into a real user. So we can plan ahead to say, all right, we're going to need a dev at this point to be able to take this on. Once we actually have that person in place in those plans, we can come in and just with one, or I think it's one total click, you can reassign all of those plans to the person that you actually bring onto that team. So again, even though you don't necessarily know who's going to be doing that work, you can still plan ahead for that team to be able to have that availability of a particular person with a particular skill, even though you don't necessarily know who that person is going to be yet. So there's a lot that you can do within Capacity Planner, but really at this point, I wanted to talk about, what can you do with that data outside of the native capacity planning function? So again, we were talking about how we take Capacity Planner data, we can use that within Structure. We can use that and have that tied to Timesheets data. We can use that within Financial Manager or other types of reporting. So as we go through this, we're going to kind of show how Capacity Planner pops up in those other tools to make even more actionable data available to you. So I know a lot of folks are using Timesheets. We have just thousands and thousands of installs of Timesheets, but not necessarily a lot of folks having that tied to Capacity Planner. So if we're in, for example, Tempo timesheets, we can kind of start there. I just jumped right into my timesheet user interface within Tempo timesheets. So this is my work, my logs. This is demo data, but these are my work logs that I would have that would show. So I've got anything in here that I've already logged time on. But if you're using Tempo Capacity Planner, you also have anything that's been planned or assigned for you that will show up on those work logs. So again, part of Timesheets is that we want to capture everything that folks are doing as easily as possible. But then when they come into this, they can see exactly what they've had planned for them, be able to easily log that time in here, adjust time if it didn't necessarily go to plan. Like, for example, I've been, assigned to work on this for 8 hours. Maybe that's not something I'm doing because clearly I've logged other bits of time. But I can come in here and say, all right, I've got a specific amount of time that I want to log in here. When I go to log that time, it will ask me exactly how much time did you work on it. It serves as a great reminder. Again, in here, you've got something set up for someone in Capacity Planner. It'll show up on their timesheets as a suggested activity or time log. I did want to mention too, I don't know if a lot of folks have seen this, but as we were talking about Capacity Planner earlier, we talked about the calendar invites that you can have that are integrated. Again, we're integrating those for the purposes of capacity, but then we also have that integration to calendar within timesheets as well. So again, we're making sure that we log all that data correctly. So we've got planned time, right? And we've got that, the time that's been logged. So the nice thing about that, in addition to using this with timesheets, is that you get reporting of planned versus actual. So I'm going to switch over to a report that I've already got pulled up here, my planned versus actual tempo report. So if you've got timesheets and you're also using Capacity Planner, this is where you can see that breakdown of what did we plan versus what did we actually do over a certain period of time. So in my case, I've got this broken down by projects. So I could see, perhaps we planned 300 hours on this Android project. We spent almost double that, on the actual work itself. So we can get a further breakdown by either by team or by any other field that we've got in here. So if we wanted to see that broken down by team or by user, we can add that and be able to see that information even a little bit further. So who actually spent all that time on this particular project? It looks like Rich P's team over here spent way more time on this project than was planned for. So that gives us the opportunity to kind of dig in and see, going forward, is that something that we can resolve? Is there a reason that was that way? And it gives you that sort of overall view of what was planned versus what was actually done. So in addition to that, of course, we can break this down even further if we need to. We can export this. You could filter this on any sort of, Jira field, custom field, tempo field that you need to in that reporting to get that sort of sliced and diced the way that you need to see it. So before we jump into structure and see how that looks in the structure tool, I did want to talk about Financial Manager. So Financial Manager is great because it takes, that either the Capacity Planner data or the log time data, and you can assign things like labor costs, billing costs, expenses, things like that to that time worked and that's associated with that project, so that you can get not only that, plan versus actual, but you can also see things like, what is our budget? How are we stacking up against that budget milestone that we have set? So if I jump into Tempo Financial Manager, I'm taking that data that I'm collecting either from the log time or from that plan time and getting all of that visualized for me here. So if you have, let's just say you're just using timesheets and Financial Manager, you're going to have all that logged time up until that today's date, which is right here. So we know exactly what's been going on. We see budget milestones and how those stack up, any expenses or anything like that, and breakdowns of like CapEx versus OpEx. But right here, going forward, we're taking all of that planner data. So any information that you set up in Capacity Planner for something that's part of this project or the scope in Financial Manager, and we're going to sort of give you that forecast of what's that going to look like. Do we have, any danger of hitting our budget milestone? Is there a specific amount of projected labor that's going to ramp up over a certain period of time? Are people's, cost rates changing that we need to be able to see, like, halfway through the year? Is there a change in cost at the beginning of the calendar year? Do we need to adjust that for Financial Manager? So we're taking all of that planning data. Again, we're assigning things like cost rates, billing rates, and things like that to the people that are in there. And based on the work that they're planning or that they're doing, we're able to do those projections directly within Financial Manager. So last but certainly not least is the ability to show that capacity planning data within Structure. For folks that are not necessarily familiar with Structure, Structure is a great PPM system that allows you to see all the things that you're planning on doing, be able to view them in Gantt charts, prioritize them and filter them any way that you want to, and then also be able to view your resources and their capacity lined up with that. So if I jump into my structure view, so again, structure, part of Tempo in that Tempo app. So if I jump into structure, and I've got a view that's currently built in here that shows that hierarchy of everything that needs to be done, filtered on exactly how we need to see it. Lots of different columns that we can build out. Again, I know this call is not about structure, but I get excited about it. So structure is great for making sure that you have good views of everything that you need and all the different indicators there. But then we also have, of course, this Gantt chart on the side that will show you exactly what's going on, what's related to other things, what are those dependencies look like across the board. Are there teams that are working in sprints, teams that are not, and how do those things line up? But where Capacity Planner comes into play is down here at the bottom in this sort of 4 quadrant view that we've got here. We can see all of our resources, anybody by team or by individual that is involved in something to do with the view that we've got in this structure. So whatever our grouping or whatever we've set up in here, these are all the different teams and people that are involved in things that we see on our Gantt chart. And Capacity Planner allows you to, at whatever level, at whatever zoom level that you want to, you can zoom in quite a bit here, but it allows you to see a breakdown, almost like a heat map down here at the bottom of who's got a lot going on. What does that capacity look like? So if I were to expand out, for example, my team Beethoven, I can see exactly who's assigned to those different things for Team Beethoven, see exactly who might have some time or capacity available to take additional things on, or also see in red where people are perhaps over their capacity and we need to make adjustments. And this gives you that extra view that lines it up with not only what you need to get done, when it needs to get done, but then also who do we have available and what is their capacity down here at the bottom. Now, great part about this too is that if I wanted to, for example, look at what Abdallah has got going on here, so he's got a bunch that's going on here that's in red, and I wanted to see what his planning looks like. Because this is integrated directly with Capacity Planner, I could just click on the little Tempo logo that's next to Abdallah, jump right into his planning and see exactly what he's got going on. So we can see that maybe he doesn't have a whole lot planned for him as far as work goes, but he's got a lot of calendar events in here that are sort of diminishing his capacity. So we're taking that into account when we show that in structure. We want to get a true view of their capacity, not only in Capacity Planner, but then also within structure, because that's that great high level overview of everything that's going on in here. So I'll pause here just to kind of take a look and see if there were any other things that we needed to talk about here. But I think what we've overall covered so far today, again, an overview of that capacity planner. How does that work by teams? How do we account for people that have different iterations in the way that they actually do their work? Are they sprints? Do they have different times that they, time frames and workloads that they can take on? So once we've got all that information set up by teams or by individual resources, we can tie that to them using timesheets. We can pull that information directly over and make sure that they log time and are working to plan. We can also use that timesheets data to create those plan versus actual style reports at the end. That gives you really good actionable data for, things like future sprints, future months, planning. How close are we to, doing what we actually plan, and do we need to adjust that? Financial manager, again, taking all that data one more time and adding things like cost rates and billing rates and seeing exactly how that project is scoped to go. Like, what are we forecasting? Basically based on planning and those different rates and expenses that we have tied to it. And then for that really good high level planning, being able to show all of that information in one place, structure takes all that data and all those different issues and things that you need to work on, allows you to see the dependencies, but then also allows you to plan the time and exactly who you have available to work on that and what their capacity is altogether.
Thank you, Robbie. So for those of you who'd like to just jump right in and continue your SPM journey with the Tempo portfolio, I invite you to visit Tempo's page in the Atlassian Marketplace. You can trial any of our apps showcased today in the demo and more for a trial period of 30 days for free. And as I mentioned before, the main focus of this webinar was the project collection, and we currently have discounts in place for qualified customers. You also see that we have the program collection that also includes Capacity Planner, as well as the portfolio collection that shows a wide variety of the majority of our AMP products. Thank you again for joining our webinar. We'll see you on the next one, and have an amazing Wednesday. Thanks so much.